Alright, so as you can tell, I look the same and I'm standing in the exact same spot as I was at the end of the last video. That's because I forgot to shoot the beginning of this video, just like I forgot to shoot the end of the last video. So in this video, I install a radio in the O2 Camaro. The reason I needed to is because I pulled the old double din that I installed and put it in my wife's Xterra, and I don't want to, even though I pulled it out of the Xterra after it got totaled, I didn't want to reinstall it in the Camaro. This head unit was really just a pain in the ass to install, and I really didn't care for its GPS. So I got a fairly decent quality Kenwood single din unit off the internet, and I'll be installing it in this video. From what I remember what I shot, I showed you how I splice things together. For radio harnesses, I tend to do soldering between the Metra harness and the Kenwood harness. And then in this one, I got a module that lets me use the steering wheel controls. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so as you can see, I'm set up here. I have the Metra harness, the Kenwood harness, and the stuff for the factory steering wheel controls. I'm going to solder these connections. I mean, you can crimp them, do solder splice connections and stuff like that, but I prefer soldering just because it saves room, a bit more professional looking, and if you stagger the solder connections, you retain most of the flexibility of the harness. So I have a few of these tie wraps that you get from Electronic Things headphones or whatever, and I'm using those to keep the rest of my stuff out of the way as I work on the speaker side. I'm starting with the speaker side because I still need to do some research on how to integrate the steering wheel control module into the factory side harness. It looks like I'm going to have to add a pin to this side, and I still have to figure out what I did, I don't know, 7 years ago in the Camaro when I added the amp. I need to figure out which wire I have as the amp power turn on. So in this, I'm just going to focus on the speaker wire side at the time, and in another day or so I'll come back and finish up the rest of the harness. If I haven't covered it already, but the right way to do this is to tune each of the wires, butt them up next to each other, and then add a little bit of solder, and you're done. I suck at tuning wires, but so what I used to do is I just splice the ends, shove them over each other a little bit, kind of twist it together so it lays flat, and then add a little bit of solder and call it a day. I've never had any problems doing it that way, but I'm doing this on YouTube and stuff like that, so I'm gonna attempt to do it the right way. So here we go. So I have my flux, I have some IPA, my soldering iron set up. So let's start this and see where we go. got, sorry, don't really have the camera set up for this, but basically what I have going on is my thumb's the insulation wire, my fingers are the wire itself, and so basically what I kind of have going on is something along these lines. You don't want the wire from the opposing side to be touching or pressed into the insulation of the opposing wire. You want it just a little bit away and touching. Again, you just wet the soldering iron and add just a touch of solder, and it flows, and you then have a good connection. All right, so let's add a bit of flux. Help that heat transfer. See if I can bring this to you guys and get it in focus. Alright, so I don't know if this is really the right lens for this, but here's the solder joint. It's not perfect by any means, but it'll serve for this purpose here. So I'm gonna put the heat shrink over it. So what I got going on with the heat shrink is it'll be one piece. I slide over, do my best to kind of center over the joint. Alright, once I shrink this piece down, there we go. Once I shrink this down, then I'll slide the second piece over for just a bit of extra protection. And there you go, this joint is done. So here we go, we have the heat shrink roughly centered across the solder joint. A little bit of heat. And you can tell that was not centered, not very well. Alright, let that cool. Just a skosh. And well, this would look a lot better if I actually centered it, but I didn't. But it's good enough. Can't really fix it at this point anyway without undoing the solder joint. So that's done. Second round of heat shrink. Still a little hot to touch. Alright, but now our first joint's done, and as you can see, we have a little bit of play with the rest of the joints. Not a lot, but it'll be enough. Alright, so I reset up the camera in time-lapse mode and start knocking some of these guys out. Alright. Okay, so here we have our harness that we built. This is the vehicle side. Oh, I gotta put that piece back on. Vehicle side, this is for the module that hopefully will control the steering wheel. Or let the steering wheel control the radio, I should say. And then this, the connection you saw me struggle with. This guy is the power on amp for the power on control wire for the amp. I'm replacing the one that I had. So let's hook everything up and and the radio side. So let's hook everything up and see how it works. Okay, so that's the radio. And we got steering wheel controls for the most part. It looks like the only thing we don't really have is the AM FM button. But this thing does have like, I think it's like a USB-C port, so I should be able to pop that open, maybe reprogram it. I guess you can set dual controls for everything we have here. So I don't know, for the most part I'm happy. I'll probably focus on rerunning the power on wire for the sub, and then I have a new RCA cable coming to go to the rear. I don't think the one I currently have in here will reach, because before there was a second connection in the back of the radio, and that actually had some length to get to there. So yeah. Okay, so the final piece of the install is the bezel. So let's get that in there and see if everything lines up. Alright, so there's a radio install. If you like what you saw here today, go ahead and click that like button. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and click the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Displacement Garage.